Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 11 for key game picks. Quick thoughts from week number 10. Obviously, the big winner was, well, actually, two big winners that came out of week number 10, and it has to be the Dallas Cowboys and the Seattle Seahawks. And the reason being is that Dallas, out coming off in a much impressive win over the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I really wouldn't call it impressive. That it was probably maybe one of the games of it was definitely one of the games of week number 10, possibly candidate for game of the year right here. Anybody who saw the Dallas Cowboys and Pittsburgh Steelers game, that game went back and forth and back and forth. That was quite an entertaining football game we saw. And it was just unfortunate that it had to come down to a penalty that Pittsburgh messed up with a face mask, and then Elliott just ran it in for the game-winning touchdown in the end after Ben Roethlisberger. And who saw that fake spike? Shades of Dan Marino in 1994 against the New York Jets when Roethlisberger did the fake spike and threw it for a touchdown pass. That to me, that was crazy. We saw everything in that game. But then when I said the Seattle Seahawks were another big winners here, wow, talk about retribution from a couple of years, even though it doesn't avenge the Super Bowl loss. But it was a lot of irony in it because it came down to a goal line stance in the end of that game. That game also went back and forth between them and the Patriots. But as I said right now, it was a bit of irony because it came down to a goal line stance. So obviously those are the two big winners coming out of week number 10. And quite possibly Seattle Seahawks are now making a case for also the team to beat in the NFC. Tough to really say right now. You look at other teams right now that have really fallen apart. Minnesota continues to fall apart. Green Bay continues to fall apart. Atlanta took a step back, but I really wouldn't call it much of a loss. They should be fortunate, though. Teams within, and when I talk about the Falcons, that teams like the Saints and the Panthers both ended up losing. So really, it's quite a jigsaw puzzle going on in the NFC conference. Now, as far as the AFC, even though the Patriots lost, they still are the team to beat in the AFC. That is no question that I see nobody stopping them in the AFC conference. Now, a couple things that came to mind before we get into Week 11. As this time of this video, and if anybody saw the press conference of Tony Romo, class act. Give him a class act. I mean, he's acknowledging the fact that Prescott now is their quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. I know it was a tough pill to swallow for Tony Romo, but if you saw that press conference, that really was, I give him I give him an applause. That is a big class act coming out of him, even though he knows his career is nearing an end in Dallas. And the other big news coming out is Gronkowski. A punctured lung, he'll be out for 1 week. But I think it came at a good time for Gronkowski because the Patriots are playing the Patriots playing the 49ers, and the 49ers are not that good of a team. So and besides, everybody knows Patriots will beat the 49ers in that game very easily. Other than that, that's pretty much it that came out of week number 10. It was a little bit of a quiet week in week number 10, but two good games that came out of it. Possibly those are games of the year candidate right there. Anyways, let's get into week 11. All right, not much of week number 11, but here are the 4 key games that I came up with. Let's begin with key game number 1, and that is the Arizona Cardinals at the Minnesota Vikings. The current lines for this game is actually even. Both teams are struggling. Now, Minnesota lost their game against Washington, but Arizona did beat the 49ers. Now, here are some stats coming out of those games. That those two teams played respectively. Carson Palmer went 30 of 49, 376 yards, and 1 touchdown pass. And they were fortunate to beat the 49ers on a last-second field goal, which really the Arizona Cardinals really didn't play all that impressive when they should have blown out the 49ers if they say they're still somewhat of a good team. Now, Bradford, 31 of 40, 307 yards, and 2 touchdown passes in the loss against the Redskins. I mean, obviously the turnovers killed him in that last game, but he did have an impressive game, but it really wasn't enough to stop the turnovers. So no question, a very, very tough game to pick here, but I think I will go with the Arizona Cardinals. Minnesota continuing to struggle. They've lost 4 straight, and who's to say this is going to be another loss for them to continue their losing streak? They have completely fallen apart. They're 5-4 right now, but let's just face the facts here. The way Minnesota, if they don't get their act together, they're gonna drop further and further along with a major collapse in that division. I mean, they just released their kicker of all things here because they feel that he was responsible when really their offensive line can't protect Bradford. I don't know what has happened. Their running game hasn't been going effectively. Bradford's having trouble throwing passes. So this is why, I mean, this is really a tough game to pick here, but this is why I'm going to go with Arizona. I think Minnesota struggles to continue in this game. And that is, it's kind of like I said, this one's a tough one to pick here. It's one of the tough ones to pick. This is why I'm going to go with the Cardinals here. This is not a sure pick here because Minnesota, I think, should have some sense. They should be able to bounce back here, but I don't know. With the way they're playing right now, they should have been able to bounce back against Washington, and they didn't. So that's why I'm going to go with the Cardinals. Cardinals over the Vikings. Key game number 2, Philadelphia Eagles against the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are a 6.5-point favorite in this one, and that is about right. Carson Wentz for the Eagles win 25 of 36, 231 yards, and no touchdown passes. They got into a little bit of a competitive game against the Falcons, but in the end, Philly's defense actually stepped up and stopped the Falcons. And for Seattle, a very, very good win up in New England with Russell Wilson going 25 of 37, 348 yards, and 3 touchdown passes in a game that Seattle needed to have. So you would say right now Seattle has the edge, and I think they do. This is kind of a sure pick here, but don't be surprised if the Philadelphia Eagles make it a game here. And I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks in this one, especially since they're at home. Philly hasn't played that well on the road. They've struggled, but don't be surprised if the Eagles actually make this a competitive game here, and that is why. Don't be surprised if it's a close game here, but I like the Seahawks in this one. I think they'll pull it out here. Seattle Seahawks over the Philadelphia Eagles. Key game number 3, the Green Bay Packers against the Washington Redskins. The Redskins are a 2.5-point favorite. There's a chance that number might go down a little bit lower to possibly 2, maybe 1.5. Now, look, I mean, a lot of you Packer fans are saying, okay, why are you saying that this number might go a little bit? Look, the Packers are playing desperately right now, and let's look at Aaron Rodgers' stats. He went 31 and 51. He really struggled in that game. He was picked off, I think once or twice in the game against Tennessee. He was 31 and 51, 371 yards, and 2 touchdown passes. For Kirk Cousins and the Redskins, he went 22 of 33, 262 yards, and 2 touchdown passes. Now, this game is kind of evenly matched here because Washington has struggled throughout the season. And 2.5 kind of is about right, but it might be a little bit lower, possibly maybe to 2 points here because Green Bay is going to be playing like a desperate team. And there is no status on whether Clay Matthews will be playing in this game, but they really need him desperately on defense if they want a shot. This is not a sure pick here in this one. Both teams are about evenly matched, but I will kind of go with the Washington Redskins here. Green Bay struggles are continuing here, and you would think that for Aaron Rodgers, you would think they finally would get out of the slump, but they haven't shown they've gotten out of it yet. They have lost 3. I think they've lost now. This is like their second straight loss they've had. Yeah, they've lost 2 games in a row, and the other one was against Indianapolis. But really, they've really struggled big time, and they got to do something to get out of the slump. But it might be a little bit hard. The way Washington's playing right now, they're playing much better, and they're finally getting them back. Especially for the Redskins, they're trying to keep pace in the NFC East as best as possible. And this is not a sure pick here. I'm going to go with the Washington Redskins here. Should be a very close game here, but I'm going to pick the Redskins here. It's going to be a very close game. Redskins over the Packers. And finally, key game number 4, it is the Oakland Raiders versus the Houston Texans. The Raiders are a 6-point favorite in this one. Now, keep in mind, this game is in Mexico City as the NFL is continuing their international tour. I don't know who the designated home team is in this one. I think it's the Raiders, but for all purposes and all, we'll just leave the title the way it is, Raiders versus the Texans, because I don't think there is a designated home team for either of these two teams. Now, Raiders are coming off their bye, and it couldn't come it couldn't come at a time where they were at one point they were in first place in the AFC, but because of their bye week and Kansas City winning their game, Kansas City for the time being is in first place because they hold the tiebreaker over the Raiders because the Chiefs beat them earlier in the season. Now, Derek Carr coming off the win over Denver a few weeks ago, went 20 of 31, 184 yards, no touchdown passes. Mostly the running game did all the work for the Raiders in their victory against Denver a couple of weeks ago. Now, Brock Osweiler for the Texans went 14 of 27, only 99 yards in passing, and 2 touchdown passes. There's no question here, 6 points is probably just about right for the Raiders here. Texans are not playing all that impressive. The Raiders could not be any more on a roll than they've already have been, and this is why, believe it or not, I'm going to pick the Oakland Raiders in this one. I think the Raiders will definitely beat the Texans here. This is kind of a sure pick here. The way the Raiders are playing offensively, they're getting on track. Defense-wise, I still think they do have problems in the secondary, but the way the Raiders offense is carrying the team right now, and the way Derek Carr is playing right now, he's just playing phenomenal. There's no question. You got to go with the Oakland Raiders here in this one. Raiders over the Texans. All right, that wraps up my picks for week number 11. For all of the NFL lines, including my picks for week number 11, go to thesportblog.blogspot.com. Remember, my video goes up first, and then my blog post goes up after that. I will see you guys next week when I talk about my Week 12 Thanksgiving edition. And until then, I will see you all next week. Take care and enjoy your football weekend.